Good morning and welcome to the channel. We're back with another episode and we are going to be repairing this drywall that was damaged by some moisture in the basement. To start off, we're going to clean up the jagged stuff. The homeowner ripped out the worst of it, but we do need a straight line. You can either use a level for this step, just find level, cut it with my blade, or you can use a tape measure, measuring 2 points. You want to find your highest point of drywall first before you do this. Find that, make your marks, and then you can just use any straight edge to connect those lines and either trace it with a pencil or trace it with your blade. I have a laser level though, so it makes the job a little easier. I'm just gonna get an idea of where my laser is at for that, and then I could just trace it with my blade. The reason I want to know what height I'm at is to make the most use of my drywall sheets. And it only takes a couple passes with your knife to get through this stuff. You could use an oscillating tool if you have one like this. It just creates a lot more dust, but it's a good option as well. But I'm just going to use my blade. It's just cleaner, I find. You can also set your blade to about 1/2 inch, which is the thickness of your drywall, and hopefully you don't cut into the vapor barrier, that plastic sheeting underneath the drywall, because you'll have to repair it if you do cut through it. So a few passes and it just breaks off like that ideally. I have my laser level set on a corner bead of the room, which is a metal bead on the outside corner if you have one, and I can just adjust it a lot easier by using that corner bead. So same thing, just tracing that laser line with my blade, doing a few passes, and it should just fall off. And then I'm just going back and cleaning up any obstructions that might be in the way of my new piece. There's the metal corner bead there. I'm just sliding my laser level on because it has a magnet on the back side. And same thing, just to make use of the materials that I do have, I want to do bare minimum for my cutout. Cleaning up as I go anything that might get in the way of my new sheet, which includes screws like this from the old drywall. Make sure I have the right bit on there, a Phillips bit. And then down here too, I have a couple. They are filled with mud often as you do rip out, so I tap on the back of my drill here like this just to seat in the bit. Makes it easier to remove the screw. Here's a tear in the vapor barrier that I was trying to avoid. You can just fix that with some tuck tape. Just use the appropriate tuck tape. That's a vapor barrier as well. And we're ready to begin installing the new drywall. It is going tight to the floor. There's a reason for that for this job, but typically you'd want to keep your drywall 1 inch up off the floor to prevent any moisture from wicking up. So I do recommend that. I do have a drywall screw gun that I'm going to use. It's going to make the job a lot faster. If you don't have that, you can just use a drill. It's just with this gun, it does preset my screw and dimple it in. You don't want your screw sticking proud at all because you want it recessed in a little bit, but you don't want it to break through the drywall paper, which is a mistake a lot of people make. As soon as it breaks through the paper, it's not really holding much. For a drywall seam like this, which is 2 pieces of drywall coming together, you want to stitch it up every 4 or 6 inches just to prevent that stud behind from twisting and moving the pieces of drywall at a separate rate, which would create a crack. And I do like having my drill on standby because I can manipulate the screw a bit more, which comes in handy in a place like this. So I'm just going to make sure that seam is well secured. Just like that, and that's one sheet screwed off, but you can notice here that I forgot to remove an old screw and it broke through my drywall, so I'm going to have to deal with that. I'm going to have to repair that with some mud and tape. That's why you just want to make sure there's no obstructions because it does come back to create extra work. And it's the same process with this sheet as well. I'm just screwing it off, stitching the original drywall and the new drywall together like that, as you can see, using my drill to make sure everything's seated properly. And just like that, I have the drywall installed. A little patching a couple places, but I didn't have to get an extra sheet, which would have taken another hour to go to the store. Now you have to remove anything that's loose, so this paper on the original drywall and the paint is loose, and your new mud and tape just won't adhere to that properly if you don't remove it. So you want to make sure it's gone. I am using sheetrock 90 here, which is a fast setting drywall compound. Yeah, maybe 30 minutes of working time with that, and then it starts to stiffen up. I do have a video, a series that I show explaining how to apply the different stages of drywall mud, but this will just be the first stage. If you want to watch the other videos, which I'll post at the end, feel free if you are doing a full drywall job. But you start by just applying mud to the seam, and then with your paper tape you find the center of the seam, center your tape on it, and slowly press it on until it's laid out, and then push it in, avoiding any ripples. And once it's pushed on, you can go a little more firm and remove any excess. You want to make sure that there's no humps or anything underneath the tape, making sure it's well seated and pushed in, and cleaning up those edges. This sheetrock 90 does dry quite hard, so you want to avoid more work trying to chip off any extra mud you see. And on the other end, same thing, I'm just lying on loosely and then going back and pushing in a lot tighter. Same with the inside corners too. You just apply your mud to both sides of the corner, and then with a pre-creased paper tape corner, you push it in as well, make sure it's seated in there nicely, and then just lightly push it on first. And once it's lightly pushed on, you can go back and go a little more firm to remove that excess mud underneath. Not too much, otherwise your tape won't stick. Once that's done, you can mud the one side of the inside corner. Don't try and do both sides, just do one side. It's the best way to tackle that. It avoids making a mess. And then once that's fully dry, you do the other side of the tape. Here you can see a bigger gap. It's almost a 1/4 inch at its bigger point probably, which isn't a problem if you do use the sheetrock 90 because it is a harder setting mud. It can handle a bigger gaps like that. So I put it on evenly. Same process, I just loose lay my tape on there. Make sure it's on the center of that seam. Run it along. Usually I would do the whole seam first, but because this is a fast setting mud, I am doing it in stages just to ensure that my tape can adhere properly to that mud I've laid on the wall. So once I do this whole seam, lay it on, I go a little more firm over it all, starting in the center, kind of working my way out to avoid any ripples or creases in the tape. And then when I get towards the end, I can squish out all the excess. Carefully, it can be a little tricky to do this step, but just take your time, making sure there's no ripples. You can't play with your tape, or you can't play with your mud too long. It does start to dry once it's on the wall, so just be mindful of that. And especially if you're using sheetrock 90, don't mix up too much and just go in small stages. You can see here it's not adhering quite as well because the mud's starting to stiffen up, but I do go over my tape if I can with a final coat. This just accelerates the stage a little bit, and I think makes it adhere a bit better. And that's the process of the first coat. So if you are a new beginner, I'd encourage you to watch the video that I'm going to post right now here and follow along that series, and use regular mud if this fast setting stuff makes you work a lot quicker. So take your time, do all your screw holes, do all your seams, and that's the first coat. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.